Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for being here. I've got a story today that hits close to home. It's not just a story about a slap. It's about betrayal, pride, survival, and standing your ground when life tries to strip everything away from you. My name's Parker, and this is something that still burns in my memory. The last thing any man wants is to be humiliated, especially in front of his own family. That slap, real or almost real, doesn't just land on your skin. It lands on everything you believe you are, your manhood, your position as a father and husband. And if you let it happen, if you don't push back, that label sticks. Weak. I know this because I nearly wore it myself. My wife's lover had the nerve to raise his hand to me right in front of my wife and our little boy. But I wasn't about to let him finish what he started. I made sure he'd think twice before ever lifting his hand again. But let me take you back, because this didn't start with a slap. It started 6 years ago when I married Naomi. I was 28. She was 25. And we were wild for each other. The kind of love where you believe nothing could ever go wrong. I remember looking at her at the altar and thinking, this is it. This is a life I've been waiting for. Soon after the wedding, Naomi got pregnant. It wasn't planned, but we welcomed it like it was meant to be. She decided to stay home once our son was born, and for 2 years she poured herself into motherhood. I admired that. I was working a steady corporate job, bringing in enough to keep us more than afloat, and things felt solid. We weren't rolling in money, but we had comfort, dreams, and, most importantly, each other. Once our son turned 2, Naomi said she was ready to go back to work with her education degree. She landed a teaching position quickly. I was fully behind her. I knew she needed more than just being a mom and a homemaker. She needed purpose. Her energy shifted in a good way, and with both of us bringing in money, life got easier. We even started planning for the future, a bigger home, maybe another kid down the line. That stretch of time was the good part, the kind you don't realize you'll miss until it's gone. Then everything changed. The company I'd worked for got bought out. At first, we all believed the new leadership would mean opportunities, innovation, maybe a pay bump. Instead, they used phrases like streamlining and synergy, which really meant layoffs. I was let go. Me, the guy who'd always done things by the book, always showed up. Just like that, I wasn't needed anymore. I tried not to let it break me. Every morning, I sent out resumes, filled out applications, waiting for any response at all. Nothing came. Eventually, I registered for a rideshare app just to make ends meet. It was a blow to the ego, going from corporate meetings to driving around strangers for tips. But I didn't stop there. I'd always wanted to start something on my own. So I jumped into e-commerce, bought courses, built a store, followed the so-called experts. It went nowhere. No matter what I did, nothing stuck. Every dollar I invested disappeared without return. It was like I was cursed. Nothing I touched turned out right. I was sinking fast, not just financially, but mentally and emotionally. And that's when the cracks in our marriage started to show. Naomi at first was patient, but that patience had an expiration date. She began to get sharp with her words, never directly blaming me, but her tone said it all. I could feel the resentment building. She was now the one holding up the house while I struggled to catch up, and it made her bitter. I understood. Honestly, I was frustrated too. I wasn't slacking. I just couldn't seem to get a break. Our conversations became cold, clipped, and centered around bills or our son's school. Any real connection faded. Intimacy, a distant memory. The only thing keeping me grounded was my son. His laughter, the way he looked at me, it reminded me why I was still trying. But Naomi, she started acting differently. She'd stay out late, stop explaining where she was going. If I asked, she'd snap back with, "Why do you care?" or "It's not your business." I tried to rationalize it. Told myself she was just tired, maybe needed space. I kept believing things would settle once I found a way out of this hole. That hope kept me blind longer than it should have. One day, my car finally gave out. I had to leave it at the mechanic. I came home to an empty, quiet house. Our son was still at school. I took a seat to figure out how to stretch the few dollars we had left. Then I heard a car in the driveway. When I looked out the window, I saw her. Naomi was in the passenger seat of a silver sedan. A man I'd never seen before was behind the wheel. She got out first, walked up to the door, and turned to him. She tried to convince him to come in. He shook his head like he was in a rush, then pulled her close and kissed her right on the lips. As he walked off, he told her to be a good girl, and she giggled like a teenager. I stood there frozen, watching everything. When she came in and saw me, her face changed. She knew I saw it all. I looked her straight in the eye and asked, calmly but firmly, "How long has this been going on?" She played dumb at first. I didn't let it slide. I repeated myself, clearer this time. "How long have you been cheating on me?" She didn't even deny it. Instead, she got loud, defensive, accused me of being controlling, said I had no right to question her. She twisted it all around, trying to make it my fault. I didn't argue. I just walked to our bedroom and closed the door behind me. After that day, she stopped hiding anything. No more excuses or lies, just cold indifference. She did what she wanted, came and went freely, answering to no one. I could tell she thought she had all the power now. She had the job, the money, and, worst of all, she knew the one thing I never want to risk losing, my son. I started to realize that she was using that, threatening divorce without ever saying the words, keeping like a sword over my head. She knew I was struggling, and she was betting that I'd stay silent, stay small, and stay put. She was wrong. She never said directly, but the threat was always there, child support that would bleed me dry. It was in the way she looked at me, the way she carried herself, like she was daring me to challenge her, knowing full well I didn't have the resources to fight back. And for a while, I didn't. I stayed quiet. I kept the peace. But inside, I was slowly unraveling. Every day, I watched her act like I didn't exist, like I was some inconvenience she had to tolerate, all while she continued living under the same roof with me and our child. It felt like death by 1,000 cuts. I knew something had to give. Eventually, I realized I couldn't keep letting it go. This wasn't just about emotions anymore. It was about taking back control. I contacted a divorce attorney, laid everything out, the cheating, the disrespect, the way she treated me like I was nothing. She made threats about divorce like it was some kind of weapon, and I had to take that seriously. The lawyer listened, asked all the right questions, and then gave me advice that changed everything. He said, "Don't wait for her to file. You file first, and do it in Tennessee." Tennessee, he explained, is a fault-based divorce state. That means if there's proof of infidelity, it can directly influence the outcome of things like custody and asset division. That might sound like a small detail, but when you're up against someone who's trying to twist everything in their favor, it's a game changer. If I could prove her cheating and emotional neglect, it would carry serious weight in court. I agreed on the spot. No more waiting. My lawyer started the paperwork, and within a few weeks, everything was in motion. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was making the first move. Preparing for the custody battle came next. This wasn't about revenge or trying to hurt her. It was about doing what was right for my son. I didn't want him growing up in a home where strange men came and went like it was no big deal. He deserved stability, something his mother couldn't offer anymore. So I filed for divorce in Tennessee and kept quiet about it. Then one afternoon, I was home with my son when I heard tires in the driveway. I looked out the window and saw her again, Naomi, stepping out of that man's car, smiling like nothing was wrong. I walked outside and stood on the porch, waiting. The guy hung back by the car, probably wondering if he could get away with stepping on my turf again. When she got close, I looked at her and said, "What you're doing is wrong. Bringing another man here is disrespectful. It's a bad example for our son." She rolled her eyes like I was just some background noise. And then the guy had the nerve to step forward. I told him to mind his business and get off my property. He laughed and said something I'll never forget. "It'll be her property when she divorces you." That was it. Something snapped in me. I stared him down and called him exactly what he was, a homewrecker. I told him he was pathetic, sneaking around with another man's wife and acting like it made him somebody. That must have hit a nerve because he raised his hand like he was going to slap me. But I was ready. The second he moved, I caught his wrist and twisted his arm back hard enough to make a point. He screamed. Naomi yelled at me to stop, acting like I was a monster. But I didn't let go until he was begging me to. Then I stepped back. He dropped to the ground, holding his arm, and Naomi ran to him. She pulled out her phone and called the paramedics, glaring at me like I was some kind of criminal. I looked at both of them and said, "This marriage is over." She left with him that night, didn't come back. The next morning, I sat in the living room alone, staring at the divorce papers. I had nothing left to wait for. So I packed a few bags, got my son, and we left. We drove to Tennessee, back to the place I grew up, back to family and stability. My parents welcomed us with open arms. That first night, I actually slept. Not the restless tossing and turning I'd gotten used to, but real sleep, the kind that tells you you're safe again. When I charged my phone the next morning, I had 89 missed calls from Naomi. I didn't need to guess why. She probably came home, saw the house empty, the car gone, and those divorce papers sitting there waiting for her. But I wasn't done. In Tennessee, you can sue someone for alienation of affection. Basically, if someone interferes with your marriage on purpose, you can hold them accountable. So I sued the man she cheated with. I had proof. He probably thought it was a joke until the summons hit him. Meanwhile, the custody battle started. Naomi tried everything. She painted me as emotionally unavailable, called me a deadbeat, tried to rewrite history, but she didn't know I was ready. I had the truth, and I had the receipts. In the end, the court gave me temporary custody while things played out. Naomi was furious, but I was finally doing what a father is supposed to do, protecting his child and standing up for himself. Moving back to Tennessee was one of the best choices I've ever made. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. No more tension, no more cold shoulders, no more disrespect. Just peace. My parents were amazing with their grandson. He had cousins to play with, uncles to look up to, grandparents who showered him with love. It felt like we finally had a real support system again. And without Naomi's constant negativity dragging me down, I started to heal. I was eating better, sleeping better, thinking clearer. I was becoming the man my son needed, not just someone barely hanging on. To anyone out there facing something like this, a broken marriage, betrayal, a custody fight, don't let anyone convince you that standing your ground makes you weak. You're not a failure for hurting or struggling, especially not when the person who was supposed to have your back chose to break you instead. If you've been through something similar, I'd love to hear your story. Share your advice. You never know who you might help. Thanks for hearing mine. Stay strong and protect your peace.